Welcome on into the Third Round Reversal Fantasy Football Podcast. Brett Malamud here with you, along with Zach Malamud. Zach, happy Football Saturday here.
Thanks, Brett. Yeah, I mean, we have the best time of the year right now. I mean, you talk about MLB playoffs going on, and then you have the start of the NHL. Obviously, football is in full effect and has been, and then NBA is just around the corner. We're approaching the sports equinox, Brett. Best time of the year and great time to be a sports fan. But obviously, the focus here on football, and we got some great matchups this week.
Yeah, certainly, the best time of year, like you said, and NBA is coming up pretty quickly as well. Baseball locked into those playoffs, and obviously we're in the Northeast in the New York area, and so it's pretty big here. Obviously, Mets, Yankees advancing to the championship series, respectively, and hockey's back, and so we're kind of in full swing. I'm rocking the Islanders gear here, and yeah, just good time to be a sports fan. So excited to get into this one. Subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Give us a thumbs up. Go check out some of our other episodes. For the deeper dive Dynasty people, go check out some of our episodes of rookie class. There's a lot of guys that'll be out there, I'm sure, on waivers. Ran into a situation this week where a team wasn't able to keep Marshawn Lloyd, so I was able to pick him up, and so yeah, there's guys that are out there that will have an impact, whether it be later on this season, if not at some point in their career. And so, looking forward to this one. Zach, before we even get into it, let's get right into a viewer question that we got here. Need help, full PPR, different league. One quarterback, one flex, one tight end. He's got Baker, Erich, and Caleb, Kirk, Mitchell, and Spears, Andrews, and Likely. So let's do that league first. We need one quarterback, one flex, and one tight end.
Yeah, I mean, this one's a little bit difficult. I think when you look at the quarterback situation, I might just pick based on matchup. I think Baker has a tough matchup, although that the Saints are going to be without their starting quarterback in this one. Their defense at home is an animal. Same with Anthony Richardson, who's going on the road to Tennessee without all of his top guys. Tennessee, one of the top defenses in the NFL so far this year. And then you look at Caleb Williams, and he's facing the worst defense, it seems, in all of football so far this year in the Jacksonville Jaguars in London. And I feel like for that reason, I would pick Caleb there. Brett, if you want to pick a flex, then I'll pick a tight end if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I could go split on that also. As far as Caleb versus Baker, I think it's pretty close. Richardson, I probably just put him a touch below because it's a little unproven. And I say that as an Anthony Richardson owner, like it's just been a little bit of scary times right now until he kind of settles himself down. Honestly, we talk about the injury still is questionable coming into the week, and so we'll see if he even plays. Still a game time decision they have him at. So yeah, I'm gonna go Caleb, but I could see you going Baker. It's really, really close though. They're probably like one or two quarterbacks apart. As far as Kirk, Mitchell, Spears, that one becomes a little more of a question mark for me. Listen, A.D. Mitchell, great receiver. However, we talk about the quarterback situation and whether Richardson's going to play or if it's Flacco. I'd put Mitchell up at the top if it was Joe Flacco playing. And so, the fact that it's not, or it looks like it might not be, makes it a little bit of a riskier move for me. Kirk, I think, has been pretty good. And so I'm probably going to go Christian Kirk here, whereas Taj Spears has that sort of, competition as far as the splits go. So I am going Christian Kirk there. But again, I really just boil it down to who was playing quarterback for the Colts this week.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely fair. And I would say if you're looking at Kirk, that's probably the safe option here. I think there's risk with the other two guys. Obviously, Spears being the number 2 back, although they have a great matchup against Indianapolis, he is behind Tony Pollard, who will get a bulk of those carries. And then you look at Kirk, who's going to be on the field for most of the game as their number 2 weapon, probably behind Brian Thomas Jr. I know Evan Ingram is coming back, But even so, I think Kirk is just the safe option here. And um, I don't know if the other two will really boom just based on their roles in their respective offenses. And Brett, I think I could go just either way on Andrews and Likely. I think it's really a toss up in the end. I'm going to say probably Isaiah Likely. I just don't know how well I can trust Mark Andrews so far this year. It's very, very tough. And for that reason, I'll take Likely on this one and just throw a toss up on it that he'll get the targets and catches rather than Andrews in this one.
Yeah, 60% route share in the last 2 weeks for Likely. And so I'm going the same way as you. I think that it's just been a really bad year for an Andrews owner. We talked about it a couple episodes ago, advising our sister in the Family Dynasty League of going out, taking Mark Andrews in a trade. Hasn't worked out to this point. We'll see if it changes. And obviously, we're talking about like they haven't talked about any injury status or whatnot. And we kind of think that he still might be battling something. Hasn't been out there. So, yeah, I'm going Likely in this one. I think that that's sort of the move. Let's go to the second one here. 2 flex, 1 running back. Let's pick 2 out of these guys. We have Alec Pierce, Pop Douglas, Dontavian Wicks, and Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Dontavian Wicks as one of them easily, just based on his matchup, and I think he's the safest option of those 4 guys. He's got a matchup against Arizona this week, and we'll get into that later. But when you look at the rest of the guys, it's a little bit tough. And I would say that your best choice would probably be the long shot guy in Alec Pierce, just based on there are no weapons to be found right now in Indianapolis. And I understand when you look at a guy like Pop Douglas, you also look at Rashad Bateman. Those guys are targets for their quarterback, but I don't know in terms of fantasy points they will give you what you're looking for. I'd take the risk in Alec Pierce. I know that it could either be a dud or a boom week. I'm willing to take that risk over those other guys who I think the points will just be minimal this week. And I think when you look at that, it's straightforward. Pearson and Wicks there. And then for the running back, Brett, I'm going to go with Tank Bigsby. Even though he said he already has Travis Etienne starting, Tank Bigsby was unbelievable in the last game. And Jerome Ford has now gotten touches taken away by D'Onta Foreman. So I think when you look at the Cleveland offense overall as well, it's just tough to believe in Jerome Ford. I'll go with Bigsby there as well.
Yeah, so for me, as far as the flex options go, I'm going Dontavian Wicks. I totally agree with you on there. Kind of forth though on the second guy. Like I think Pierce is a little bit of a risk. I think that we obviously talked about the situation at quarterback. I also want to look at the situation at the wide receiver this week because there's a couple of guys that are banged up for Indianapolis. We're not really sure their status. There's still the chance that Pierce is the third guy when it's all said and done. If Downs plays, if Pittman plays, he's the third option potentially in the offense. We've seen Josh Downs really be loved by Anthony Richardson. And so, again, there's a lot of up in the air as far as the Pierce goes. So I'm actually going to go with Pop Douglas. And I think that, as far as Drake May coming in this week, and we'll talk about it when we get to that matchup, I think that the aerial attack is going to be there a little bit more. They're kind of going to let him air it out. I actually think that Jalen Polk has a bigger upside this week than any other Patriots wide receiver. But as far as them getting the rookie comfortable, like Pop Douglas is just his separation is so good, and that's sort of what made him very effective down the stretch of last season and the start of this season. Like he got a ton of targets last week. I think it was 9 targets, and it sort of was just a numbers game for me. I had to drop him in my league, but that's sort of just the numbers game that we play with fantasy. So I'm actually going with Pop Douglas there. So sort of interesting. As far as the running back situation, I agree with you. I actually am taking Tank Bigsby. I'm just sort of out on Cleveland right now. I think that they just haven't been very effective. The quarterback has not been very good. And so as far as the situation, like they're going to be expecting Ford. And so I think that they'll be very well prepared for Ford. So especially tough defense they're coming in against, obviously Philly's coming up a bye week as well. And so I'm actually going with Tank Bigsby also. I think that the split is starting to dwindle a little bit towards Bigsby. And so, yes, I agree with it. Even though you're playing both of them, I still think that that's sort of the move that I would make. Chicago's been pretty gassed as far as, working against these running back situations. And so, now you obviously have two running backs, change of pace. I think they can be gashed for a couple big runs. And so, yeah, I'm taking both of those Jacksonville guys. But thank you, Dylan, for the question. Zach, let's jump right into our Thursday night recap as the 49ers defeated the Seahawks 36-24. Zach, which side do you want to really talk about here first?
We'll talk about the winners in San Francisco, and I'll just go off of what I'm seeing in terms of fantasy points. That in this one it was really Deebo Samuel and George Kittle being the top targets for Brock Purdy. Purdy obviously with 24.1 fantasy points this week, and then you look at guys like Samuel and Kittle. Samuel obviously had that long touchdown, 20.7 fantasy points, as well as Kittle with 22.8 fantasy points. And I think when you looked at this matchup, you said, all right, Seattle's defense is really, really weak so far this year. They've gotten taken advantage of by their previous opponents and especially New York last week. Now you look at this week and say, all right, well, the top guys kind of stepped up. Of course, Mason went out early. We'll get to him in just a second. But then you also look at the downside to this 49ers offense, where Brandon Ayuk, who we mentioned as a top wide receiver, probably a high-end wide receiver too, Brett, he's dropping. He really is dropping because the consistency is off. Of course, he had a solid enough week against Arizona, but I don't know how much I can truly trust Brandon Ayuk right now in this offense. It's just they go to Deebo Samuel. George Kittle, obviously, versus Seattle is always a big game for Kittle in the end. And even without guys like McCaffrey in there, it just seems that Ayuk has not gotten to his full potential. And I said, yes, last week he had a really, really good week against Arizona, but I need to see it more often if I'm going to trust this guy as a high-end wide receiver too, like we had him in the preseason, Brett.
Yeah, I agree. I think that as far as the situation goes, Deebo had that huge run, and so that sort of skewed his value there because you kind of look at it, you're like, oh, Deebo, big one. But for me, it was just a regular week. Seattle did a really good job, and obviously it was a game in Seattle, and they always sort of come to play at home. So I'm not really reading into anything as far as like values going one way or the other. I'm kind of keeping it how it is. Obviously, Jordan Mason gets hurt, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But I thought it was just a regular output from them. Kittle, obviously, it was good to see him kind of be the anchor in this offense when it seemed like some of the stuff wasn't really going well, and they were kind of getting to them. And yeah, obviously, it was fun watching him jump into the stands with wife, Juszczyk's wife. Juszczyk later scores and they jump into the stands again. So that was fun. But yeah, again, taking anything out of this that I didn't really already know, sort of was an outlier for me. And so, yeah, I think Ayuk, yes, he does have to step up. And obviously there were all the rumblings of what was going to happen with him and if he was going to get traded and that would have changed his value. But the fact that he's still in this crowded offense, I'm not sure that I'm putting him at that top tier where some of these other people was, but I wasn't really putting him there at the beginning of the season anyway. It was more of that lower range wide receiver 2, if not high end wide receiver 3. And he's sort of just being that. He's had a couple great weeks, like no doubt. But yeah, I'm still kind of my expectations weren't that high on him. So in a week like this, I wasn't really too disappointed with it. On the other side of the ball, I think that what is really out there is they really want to feed Kenneth Walker. I came into this week with the potential of starting Zach Charbonnet, and in my situation, I kind of was battling the injuries a little bit, and so it was like, okay, Charbonnet became this option. I'm glad that I didn't pick him because it was just so minimal output, where it was just totally the Kenneth Walker show, and it looks like he's totally healthy. 21 PPR points. Dude looks like he's just back. They did a really good job, San Francisco, of kind of capping DK Metcalf in this game. Obviously scores, but it was a really good job by them. Jackson Smith-Njigba kind of had to take the role and come along. And I think he did that. I think he did a good job. I think that it's becoming clear that JSN is a solid piece in this offense. And obviously for the dynasty owners that picked him so high last year, they didn't see that output right away, and now they kind of have that. And so I think that that's a little bit settling from that side of things.
Yeah, I mean, Tyler Lockett had a really solid game in this one as well, Brett. So it just shows you that all three guys are involved. I do think JSN is taking the step over Lockett as the number 2 guy and really that possession wide receiver. But that's not to say that Lockett can't be a flex option each week if somebody needs to. Like he's gonna get his targets, and this offense, they want to trust Geno Smith with the ball in his hands. And I mean, we've seen the stats from Geno definitely so far this year. He's almost hitting 300 yards every game, and he's over 250 almost every game. So when you look at that, they want to pass the ball, and they did that in this one. Ultimately, the Niners get the 36-24 win, a big win for the Niners to bounce back after the loss last week, and Seattle moves to 3-3 and has to figure things out now as they drop 3 straight.
Yeah, and also should be noted, Noah Fant, 6 catches, 63 yards, and potential streaming option moving forward. They play against Atlanta next week, and so again, we run into the bye weeks and all of that. So there is the potential that you can go pick him up, and he's out there in the bulk of leagues. A guy who is not out there in the bulk of leagues as we transition right into our injuries here is Jordan Mason, who is taken in pretty much every league. If you're a Christian McCaffrey owner, you were knocking on wood that you can get this guy. He suffered an AC joint sprain, and they are considering him day-to-day right now, which is probably the best case scenario. I think that there was a time right after he got hurt where it was like, oh no, like what's going to happen? Isaac Arendo had a huge run in the stretch of this game, took a knee at like the 2-yard line or whatever, or a slide. But I think that there is the potential that if Jordan Mason can't go, they still have a solid option. It's a guy that was talked about from the rookie draft standpoint, I mean, at length, of a potential guy that was going to be really good. And so I think that if you are a Jordan Mason owner, Garendo is a guy that you can probably go just stash. He's out there in a bulk of leagues. I don't really foresee him getting picked up in that many leagues because I think the day-to-day sort of status of Jordan Mason is going to scare a lot of teams away. But certainly a solid guy, and good news on the Jordan Mason front.
Yeah, just quickly on it, Brett. He's got a long week now as they prepare for the Chiefs on Monday. So a full week and a half he has now to get healthy and get back on the football field. And when you look at it, yeah, it in the end they said it was good news. Kyle Shanahan said he said we take it as good news as there wasn't anything worse. So the day to day and something to figure out. But I think that long week is definitely encouraging for Mason owners, that there is that chance that he can come back on Monday night next week. In the end, if he does miss time, yeah, it's going to be Garendo who's the back, and we'll kind of discuss if that makes it more of a decision on is he good enough, and is he a good enough option to have as a play in this San Fran offense next week.
All right, so our next one here is that Jonathan Taylor has been ruled out sprained ankle injury. It sort of just kind of was dwindling over the course of this week and didn't participate, wasn't spotted at practice. Finally, Shane Steichen comes out, says he is out this week. Zach, what do you think the impact is as far as not the Jonathan Taylor side of things, but more the Trey Sermon side of things?
Yeah, Trey Sermon in this one is now going up against the rough front of the Tennessee Titans, who have always been a tough front to go up against. They're not the best run defense in the NFL like they have been for the last 2 or 3 years, Brett, but they're pretty damn close to it. I think they're in the top 5. So when you look at it, it is going to be a tougher matchup for a guy like Trey Sermon. I would limit expectations heading into a matchup at Tennessee, plus the fact that he has Anthony Richardson there at quarterback, which means that they're going to run the ball. I think when you look at that and Richardson, it's not confirmed yet, but expected to play in this one, I believe, Brett. He looks like in the end that Richardson is going to take some carries, and that is different from the fact that Joe Flacco, the last couple of weeks with Trey Sermon, it hasn't been the same as going with Anthony Richardson. So I'd limit expectations. He's facing a tough defense, and in the end, it could be a long week for the Indianapolis Colts based on all of their injuries this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, again, I'm a Jonathan Taylor owner. I do not have Trey Sermon, and I really think that it comes down to Anthony Richardson. And like you said, Flacco being in there gave him the 16 touches that he ended up getting, well ahead of Tyler Goodson, who was the second guy. And so, yes, while he has the potential to have a running back 2 output, like so many people are saying out there, I think it's more of the lower end running back 2 output. Maybe falls in the end zone, and that's the way that we kind of have to look at him. Like it's a desperation fall into the end zone flex play. But that's sort of where I would put him. I don't think that I am looking at it as sort of a, he's a must start. He's going to be the lead guy. And when we see this, term lead guy thrown around, I think it's sort of misused. You think, the guy's going to get like 20 carries. I don't see it like that. And again, yes, it comes down to Anthony Richardson. If Anthony Richardson is playing, and it is expected that he plays, I think that we're going to see him run the ball. He's not going to just like stop being him. He's going to run the ball. And so, yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that we got to temper our expectations a little bit here.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, and so our next injury here, Malik Neighbors, another guy, part of the Dancing Nancy's, my fantasy team here. He is out this week. And so this is where it sort of became doom and gloom here. Taylor followed by Malik Neighbors for me. But he's out, got a concussion. Looks like actually some breaking news with the Giants here. The Giants are going to play Kayvon Thibodeau on IR today. And he broke a bone in his wrist. And so not great for the Giants news, obviously, as far as the defensive front. But on the offensive front, it looks like, this is going to be Wan'Dale Robinson's kind of role. We saw Slayton kind of be the number 2, and he really came through for them. Huge output as far as the volume. I think Danny Dimes is starting to air the ball out a little bit more here. And that's kind of been good for him because I think that they've made him comfortable enough where he can be effective. And so he's kind of dwindling himself. I should say not dwindling, but he's sort of, starting to earn himself some of those like spot starts where if you have a guy who's on, a bye week or whatever, you can go put him in as a streamer, Danny Dimes. And this is a good matchup for him. And we'll get to that like way later when we get towards the end of our game previews. But, I think Wan'Dale Robinson's a pretty good option now. Darius Slayton, a pretty good option as well in the flex. And so, yeah, I think they're just going to have to feed him. We don't know the situation with the running backs either, Tyron Tracy and Devin Singletary, and what's going to happen as far as them actually playing right up until Sunday Night Football. But the thing we do know is Malik Neighbors is out. And so there's a lot of balls to go around is really what I take out of that.
Yeah, I agree. And as far as Neighbors, obviously the noise right now that Malik Neighbors actually went to a Travis Scott concert, Brett,
Yeah,
the other day,
with the
and with a
concussion.
concussion. And so yeah, that doesn't really, that's not really a good look right now. But I think when you're looking at the Neighbors situation, they kind of they've been taking it a little bit easier this week, and it kind of sounded like it was coming, that he was gonna uh, sit this one out. And when you look at it in the end, I think they're being cautious about Neighbors, and not going to rush him back if he's not 100%, and rightfully so. A big piece for this Giants offense for the future.
All right, let's jump into our standouts here, Zach. Let's start out with the guy, the other LSU receiver, and I was kind of looking forward to seeing the two LSU receivers go head to head before Neighbors got ruled out. But it's Ja'Marr Chase. 2 touchdowns. He had 10 catches for 193 yards on 12 targets. Zach, huge output here for Chase. And this was sort of the guy that we wanted him to be before, obviously, we went into the abyss of, is he going to even play this season with the contract situation? Looks like no problem, though. 41.3 standard PPR points.
Yeah, and I think this one tells you that obviously he went to town on this Ravens defense, a Ravens defense that is not near the top of the NFL so far this year, and that's disappointing for Ravens defense owners in fantasy. They've been abysmal so far this year. The Ravens have, and Ja'Marr Chase was able to get by them. And of course, the focus in the end for Cincinnati is winning games, because they just cannot find a way to win games right now. However, I would say the positive of that is you're going to see them throwing the ball to their top guys. Ja'Marr Chase, of course, T. Higgins is also up there. He had a great week as well. But when you look at Chase and this offense, like, they are going to want to throw the ball because they need to win games now. This is the time, and the window is slightly closing. They're in a very tough division. Of course, in the AFC North, they have to start racking up wins. So when you look at it, I think Chase is of course the main guy here, and he's going to keep getting his opportunities. Obviously, another great matchup this week against the Giants, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
All right, so let's jump into our next one. Drake London, another member of the Dancing Nancy's, and this was a huge one. 12 catches, 154 yards, an amazing looking touchdown. He had 13 targets here for a sweet 33.4 fantasy points. And Zach, I think that for me at least, this was that validation that I kind of needed as a Drake London owner, that he can be the top target when he is needed. And he can be Mr. Reliable for Kirk Cousins. And Kirk had himself a week, just in general. But as far as, obviously over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns and all that. But as far as, the Atlanta offense, I think we're starting to see them kind of come into their own here. Kirk's getting a little more comfortable now. Darnell Mooney, I think we've seen him become quite an amazing piece here. But as far as Drake London, like, it looked like for a couple weeks it was going to be a long season. And now it's sort of kind of settled itself. He's gotten double-digit targets in the last 2 weeks, back against New Orleans and Tampa Bay. A little bit of a tougher matchup for both of those, it looked like. And so he still comes through with the points. And so I think that, for me at least, he becomes pretty much a must-start going forward here.
Absolutely. He's a lineup lock every week. Drake London is. And I think what the most validating part in the end is that Kirk Cousins is able to sling the ball still and get it to his guys. I think when you look at the game that all of these guys had, that's because of Kirk Cousins in the end, and Kirk Cousins being able to find his top guys and sling the ball around. Like I said, of course, Drake London is the top target, and he proved that in this one. However, Darnell Mooney right there next to him, I think that's okay though. Most guys, when you see, all right, there's a guy behind them, and he may take away from the stuff. I don't think it's taking away. And I think we said this in previous week. I think it's just those two guys. All right, Kirk's going to find one or the other. they're still going to get those consistent targets. And I think it's positive news if you are a Drake London owner.
I know we're in the Drake London segment here right now, but what to you as a Bijan Robinson owner have you seen as far as the effect? It's not like it's totally derailed him, but I feel like the upside has been capped a little bit more just based on these two guys kind of going off and trying to find his guys.
Well, I think the offense has kind of changed a little bit. They are going with a more passing approach because they have seen the effectiveness of those two wide receivers, plus the fact that you get Kirk Cousins to sling the ball around and good things will happen. I'm not worried about Bijan just yet. I think it's early in the season still. He also has the best matchup, I think, in the NFL this coming week when they take on Carolina. I think this is a bounce back week for Bijan. He is a buy low though right now in fantasy, Brett. I think if somebody gave an offer for Bijan Robinson, there's some good offers that it would be hard to pass up. But obviously in Dynasty, you're keeping them. In redraft, there's options out there, and it's an interesting one right now. But I'm expecting a bounce back this week, like I said.
Yeah, it's fair. I think that, again, it's been very high floor and just the ceiling has been capped a bit. And so it's just super interesting how, obviously the quarterback coming in and sort of changed the narrative of the entire offense and how everything's going. Jumping into our next guy, Tucker Kraft. Zach, he kind of just came in and stole the job from Luke Musgrave. 4 catches, 88 yards. He's got 2 touchdowns, 24.8 PPR points. It looked like he was going to be potentially injured here, and then all of a sudden the injury designation goes away. And so it was a little bit of a scare during this week, but Tucker Kraft, I think, has been a very solid option here for Jordan Love.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And when you look at the injury now to Luke Musgrave, it just validates the fact that Tucker Kraft is a really solid tight end option. And I actually saw a team where they picked up Tucker Kraft. They have him behind Sam Laporta. Like you don't need that. You can then trade some of your guys or trade one of those guys for a position player at another spot. And I think when you look at Tucker Kraft in the end, just he's going to get the targets. And this offense, they're going to want to pass the ball. Josh Jacobs hasn't been fully effective yet this year. And yes, they're going to still try and get him involved and get him his touches. But this offense runs through Jordan Love and the passing game in the end. That's why they have so many weapons. Tucker Kraft is, I think, really, Brett, the number 2 right now behind Jaden Reed. Like, there's no doubt there. And he's going to get the targets, especially, like I said, without Musgrave there. I think when you look at it, he's a really, really solid tight end 1. That's something to look at for the next couple weeks.
All right, so let's jump right into our game previews here as we travel across the pond. Sunday, 9:30 a.m. So make sure you set your lineups tonight or early tomorrow morning because those games will be kicking off early. From London, Zach, let's start out with Chicago, and I want to start out at the running back situation. DeAndre Swift has just been amazing in the last 2 weeks. He is running back 3 over that span, 55% of the snaps, 23 touches. He's just been really awesome as far as the explosiveness, as far as obviously when you fall into the end zone, like that always helps as a running back. He's a must play guy in against a struggling Jacksonville offense here.
And it's struggling Jacksonville defense.
Or Jacksonville defense, I should say.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when you look at what Swift's been able to do, they've really gotten him involved as the true number 1. It was a little bit iffy for the first couple of weeks. You had guys like Khalil Herbert and also Roschon Johnson there. Then you look at Swift, and I mean it's been really solid. Obviously, he finished as RB2 last week, so a big week for him. And I think it's going to be another big week for this Bears offense coming up against the worst defense in the NFL so far this season, Jacksonville. And I think when you look at that, Brett, you got some really good options. DJ Moore is a top 10 wide receiver this week, no doubt, because of the week he was able to put up last week, and it seems that him and Caleb have really gotten it together, the two of them. Plus, you look at the guys behind DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen. I think I'd favor a guy like Rome Odunze more as a flex play in this one, just based on the perimeter has been the real struggle for Jacksonville so far this year. And who lines up on the perimeter more? It's Rome Odunze. So I think he's going to get his targets. I think DJ Moore will get his targets. Both are really good options. Obviously, Moore is a top 10 wide, like I said, in my mind. And Odunze is a really solid flex play. I think Caleb is definitely a option this week because of how bad the defense on the other side has been. I think if you're in a tough situation, you maybe have some bye weeks. We talked about one earlier. I think you can look at Caleb as a really solid option this week against Jacksonville, Brett.
Yeah, certainly agree. Listen, we talked about, bye weeks, and Pat Mahomes is on a bye week. And so if you are one of those teams that a lot of teams out there picked Mahomes and then pick Caleb as the backup, like, have no fear with putting Caleb in this week. Like I said, struggling defense. And so for me, that's a streaming option there. And, obviously comes down to what your options are. But yeah, he be a potential quarterback one. Certainly a super flex option though, and you're going to put him in there. Swift, you're starting, like I said. Roschon, I think, is one of those guys that should definitely be added in all of leagues because we've started to see the upturn here. Definitely a flex option this week. DJ Moore, like you said, you're starting him right away there. Keenan Allen, I think, has been kind of disappointing this year a little bit. Still a flex option for me. Rome Odunze is obviously a higher upside, but a way lower floor. And so I'm kind of just staying away because he's, the third option here. Cole Kmet also has been very solid here. And for me, he's probably a lower end tight end one, but, a startable option nonetheless. Now let's get over to the other side of the ball. We talked about Christian Kirk a little bit at the top of the show. Do you foresee him obviously going against the Bears as a good option here?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, I feel like with how well this Bears offense has been moving and working well together, I think they're going to put up points, and I think Jacksonville's going to need to throw the ball. Of course, they're going to rely on the run game as well. The two guys in Bigsby and ETN. Of course, ETN is questionable, so keep an eye on that. I think when you look at Bigsby and what he's been able to do, it's ridiculous that just based on his yards per carry is insane, Brett. He doesn't get an insane amount of touches. He just makes the most of it. And I think that really stands out, that they're going to keep giving him touches as an explosive running back. And he really, I mean, his name really fits well right now, Brett. He is a true tank. He bolsters through guys and has been really good so far this season. But when you look at the rest of the guys, Brian Thomas is an automatic guy in your lineup. After the last couple of weeks, he's really proven that he is the number one here, and he's going to get his targets, and just the talent that he has is very scary. And Evan Ingram probably going to come back in this one, Brett. So when you look at that, it gives Trevor Lawrence really an option as a possession type of guy. And we've kind of seen that from Evan Ingram, especially last year with how many targets he got. In the end, he's a solid option at tight end. Obviously some bye weeks right now. So definitely somebody to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm a little more nervous about the Ingram front, and I have him in one of our leagues. But, as far as the comeback and all of that, I think that people are looking at him and he's going to come right back to being Evan Ingram. I don't really foresee that. So I'm tempering it a little bit. I'm putting him the lower end, tight end one. But obviously, yes, bye weeks are a thing. And obviously, if you have one of those top guys and Ingram's either out there or, he's your second guy, like, you can put him in and not really fear I'm tempering the expectations for my side of things. So I'm actually benching him this week. I think that, there's the potential that he doesn't exactly get the full snap count that we expect out of an Evan Ingram. Trevor Lawrence, to me, I'm fading him this week as a super flex option, but nothing more than that. Like you said, the two running backs, you got to start both of them. I think this week, potential of running back 2 output, if not potential flex output. I think we're seeing that 1-2 punch sort of be a thing. Brian Thomas right now is kind of coming to his own, and so you're putting him in your lineup if you have him. Christian Kirk's probably a flex option, though, and I'm not shying away from him, like I said, this because I think that the Bears are kind of going to go after Brian Thomas more than they go after Christian Kirk. And that sort of is the name of the game. Like you said, I think that they're going to have to throw the ball here. And so, yeah, I'm starting both those guys, staying away from Gabe Davis, though, at all costs.
Yep, 100% agree.
All right, so let's jump into the next one. New Orleans playing home to Tampa Bay. And, Zach, I think that we got to talk about New Orleans because of the situation at quarterback. Obviously, Spencer Rattler, it looks like he's going to be the guy here moving forward until Carr can get himself going. What are your expectations here as far as Spencer Rattler, and is he a potential option?
He could be, but I think when you look at this offense overall, I feel like we're going to see a bit of an Alvin Kamara type game. I think he's going to absolutely go to town with the amount of touches he'll get in this one. And I think New Orleans, rightfully so, is going to rely on their guy out of the backfield rather than putting too much pressure on Spencer Rattler. I am a little bit worried about the pass catchers this week. I think I'm benching Shaheed in one of my leagues just because I just don't know. And I think if I can see it week after week, then maybe I can change something. But if I see it this week, even that'll change my opinion. I haven't seen it yet. I'd rather go with other guys in my lineup than a Rashid Shaheed, who is going to get his targets, but is also that boomer bust potential. And I think when you look at Olave as well, he's going to be in your lineup, of course, and he is the top weapon. But I need to see Spencer Rattler actually throw the ball first and see how he works in this offense before I really believe in anything here. I like I said, I think Kamara is going to have an absolute day here. Taysom Hill is also out, so like there's not even going to be touches for him out of the backfield. They are going to run Kamara like through this Tampa defense, and I think Tampa's defensive front, which has been struggling a little bit so far this year, their run defense hasn't been the best yet this season. I think for that reason, Kamara gets a big one at home in the Dome against their rival Tampa Bay.
Yeah, for me, it's it's an interesting case as far as the Spencer Rattler thing. Obviously, from a dynasty perspective, it was one of those really late rounders in the rookie drafts and stuff. And so, yeah, you are stashing him that sort of case in more of the super flex format than you are in the one quarterback league, just because we don't know. He could all of a sudden come onto the scene and be really good. But as far as the rest of their guys go, Kamara's a must start, obviously, this week because it's a guy making his first NFL start. Like, they're going to try to get him comfortable. They're going to give Kamara the ball and kind of let Rattler get more comfortable in the pocket. So I don't know if that's good news or bad news for Olave and Shaheed. I think that it's been kind of interesting watching Shaheed operate as almost the wide receiver one. And Chris Olave kind of taking a back seat a bit here. I think that this could be one of those weeks where we actually see the script flipped and we kind of have Olave kind of be that reliable guy like we've seen in the last couple of years, ability to get open quick and things like that. So while I'm tempering my expectations for both of those guys, they're both flex options, Shaheed and Olave, even with the quarterback switch. Staying away from the tight end, though. And obviously, yeah, you talk about Taysom Hill. He's out. And so I think that, to me, speaks more of the Kamara, just like you said, like there's no competition for the touches. And so Kamara, to me, must start there. As far as the other side of the ball, Tampa Bay, Baker, he's still quarterback one. Obviously you're starting him in super flex, but he's a lower end quarterback one for me, and he's kind of in the same spot that he was in. But Irving, I think, becomes a start here in place of Rachaad White, who looks like he is doubtful for the game this week. And so Irving, kind of the option right now to the ability to take over that job. And we've seen it in the last couple of weeks where it's kind of leaned that way. This is a real opportunity for him to kind of just cement himself moving forward as the guy. Evans and Godwin, you're starting them, no doubt. Where the question mark comes to me is Cade Otton and Jalen McMillan. And McMillan right now is questionable. Sort of was operating as that wide receiver 3 option there. And Cade Otton obviously has taken that role since Jalen McMillan was hurt. So kind of curious what the splits look like if McMillan does play. And so I'm kind of leaning away from both of these guys this week, just because I'm unsure of, what Cade Otton's output. I should say McMillan, you probably will start him if he does play or if he doesn't play, but more so is the Cade Otton streaming role. I think that sort of comes down to if McMillan is playing or not. If McMillan's not in, then feel free to use him as a streaming option. But otherwise, I think that I would probably stay away if McMillan is in there.
Sorry, Brett. I think when you look at it in the end, a tough matchup in the end for Tampa Bay. And when you look at it, Tampa is going into this one against a tough defense. And I think when you look at Cade Otton and what he's been able to do without McMillan, even so, I think New Orleans defense will give him a hard time. When you look at Godwin and Evans, I think in this one it should be a solid enough game for both of them. I would limit expectations for Evans just based on he's always going to get that Lattimore shadow that he's kind of struggled with over the years. So I'd limit expectations. Godwin could have a good one here. And I expect actually just a low-scoring game in this one. I think New Orleans, because they have Rattler at quarterback, they're really going to zone in on the defensive side to keep the score low and help out their young quarterback. And there may not be too many points in this one, but Bucky Irving could be the guy to maybe get into the end zone for Tampa Bay now that Rachaad White is probably not going to play in this one. So definitely a really solid option there. And of course, you mentioned Baker, who is on the lower end of quarterback ones this week, just based on the matchup against New Orleans.
All right, so let's jump right into our next one here. Arizona at Green Bay. Love this matchup. There's a ton of guys, I would say, on both sides of the ball. This could be a really high-scoring one, just, as far as the talent on the offensive side. Zach, let's start out with Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. Obviously, you kind of have the start your guys, I think, approach here, where you kind of have Kyler, you got James Conner, you have Marvin Harrison, and then you have Trey McBride. Is there anybody else that you're kind of looking at here or no?
Yeah, Michael Wilson's been really solid so far this season. He's really taken the stamp as the second option in this one. Nothing more than a flex play, but he is a guy who can take advantage of this Green Bay secondary that has not been good so far this year. They've struggled. Of course, you got Jair on one side, and he's probably going to be hanging out with Marvin Harrison Jr. for I would say a fair amount of this game. And then Michael Wilson on the other side, he could be a solid option. But the fact that they do have Trey McBride back there as well, he's gonna end up getting some targets in this one. But really start your guys, but also yes, keep an eye on Michael Wilson, who's been really solid the last couple weeks.
And then on the other side of the ball, it's kind of the same name in the game here as far as start your guys. Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs is a flex consideration. I think you could probably start Wicks this week also. Tucker Kraft, down the list. And obviously Christian Watson's a TBD right now. But as far as the rest of those guys, you're starting them, right?
Yeah, I mean, all of these guys when you look at it, like really solid options. When you look at Kraft and Reed, as well as Jacobs, of course, and Love. Like I think when you look at, yeah, Wicks is a flex option, but after that, like obviously the story of Romeo Dobbs and everything going on, this could be a like bounce back kind of spot, and really just get him involved in this one. But when you look at it in the end, like I don't know how much I can trust him in my lineup. Even as a flex play, I think it's just difficult to really rely on him this week based on just everything going on, and based on that there's just a lot of options in this one. Brett, you said you love this matchup. I don't think you meant the pun there.
No, certainly not. But Jordan Love, obviously. I love Jordan Love in this matchup. I should say that as well. Where I think that there could be output. It's kind of crazy though with this Packers offense. Just because at the beginning of the season we were like, oh, there's too many mouths to feed, but he's getting everybody the ball, and so everybody's kind of had their way and their output here. And so moving forward, I think that that's something that's going to continue to happen. Zach, let's jump over to Indianapolis. Obviously, we talked about them at the beginning of the show, really, and sort of throughout the show. But we'll jump over to them anyway. Mike Pittman's a game time decision right now. But what's your look as the Colts go?
For the Colts, it's really slim pickings, Brett. I think when you look at Anthony Richardson, yeah, I mean, based on bye weeks, there's a lot of teams that are starting Richardson this week. I just don't know how easy of a matchup it's going to be. I think this one's going to be a tough one against Tennessee. It's also a divisional matchup. Obviously, the Titans want to grab a win at home in a division game. I think it's not going to be easy in the end, but you're gonna have Richardson in your lineup based on bye weeks and figuring things out. After that, yeah, Trey Sermon is a flex play. I limit expectations once again, like I said before. And then after that, you look at the wide receivers, and Alec Pierce could be a kind of long shot flex. Of course, Josh Downs, I would say probably put Josh Downs in your lineup as a flex option, just because I think he is going to be the top guy. Of course, I think he's questionable as well, Brett. So it's something to keep an eye on. But if he does play, like, he's going to be the top weapon, and probably the only guy that I truly would trust in my lineup this week for Indianapolis.
Yeah, obviously, we talked about like game time decision for them and game time decision for Downs, and so there's a lot up in the air. And like if both of them are out, and Pierce potentially becomes at least a flex option, Richardson's gonna have to air it out to somebody. Adonai Mitchell becomes a flex option as well. And so yeah, there's a lot up in the air right now. I think the one thing that we can say is Trey Sermon, like I said before, like temper your expectations because of Richardson likely playing in this one. So he's probably that lower end running back 2, if not, high end running back 3 flex, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, Richardson right now is sort of in that option where he's a low end quarterback 1 till we see more. Certainly a start in Superflex, but obviously we will monitor his status right up at kickoff, and all bets are off. If Joe Flacco's in, then the whole thing is a whole different ball game. As far as the other side of the ball, Will Levis, I think, is strictly a Superflex start, nothing more than that. Tajay Spears, flex option. You're starting Tony Pollard, but I still see Spears as that thorn in his side. And so for me, he's like low end flex. Calvin Ridley right now, also a flex right now. And I don't know that I can play D-Hop or Boyd. Obviously, Boyd I'm benching no matter what. D-Hop, I'm kind of just looking at what is my situation, and do I have guys on buys? Do I need some sort of desperation play here with a guy who potentially can score a touchdown?
Yeah, agreed. And when you look at it, I would say even Ridley, it's hard right now to even put him in a lineup. Of course, you are going to end up putting him in as probably a flex, but if you do have better options, like throw him in because it just has not been great so far. I will say they have a great matchup this week against Indianapolis, whose defense has been horrendous for a lot of this season so far. Maybe there's a bright spot there with Calvin Ridley, but other than that, it has been kind of hard to watch as a Ridley dynasty owner. Just not where it needs to be right now. As a number one wide, they really rely on this run game a lot more, and I think they could do so in this one. Like I said, against Indy, who struggled on defense this year.
All right, so let's jump into our next matchup. Another matchup we kind of spoke about at the top of the show. Cleveland at Philadelphia, 1:00 start. Zach, let's start out with the Cleveland Browns because it's just been sort of doom and gloom from the fantasy owner's perspective here. As far as Watson, like I told you last week, like I'm out on him. You're not playing him. He's a super flex option, but I still even starting him in super flex. It just is. It's hit and miss with him, and 1 week he could be really good, 1 week he could be really bad. Just sort of is. Kind of living up his contract as one of the all-time bad contracts in NFL history. Jerome Ford right now, you're starting him. You're not that confident because they're not getting him into the position where he can be effective. The volume hasn't totally been there. And so for me, yes, you're starting him. You're tempering your expectations. Same with Amari Cooper. I think that you kind of have to start Amari Cooper because he's the number one option, but you're not proud of it by any means. And so, very solid flex option, but, and I would say the same for Jerry Jeudy where it's lower end flex option. I think the only guy I can really be like, okay, I'm happy that I'm starting this guy is probably David Njoku. And even he has been like kind of hit and miss.
Yeah, obviously he's still coming back from that injury. Not like it doesn't seem that he's like fully 100% healthy just yet. But obviously with how tight end has been so far this year, David Njoku probably the option. One of your options, especially even with some bye weeks this week that he could go in your lineup. The other guys I'm just iffy on. Like, yes, they are flex plays. I don't blame you though if you have better options to like start them over these guys in Cleveland. It's just been terrible so far. If you have better options than Cooper, then start them. If you got better options than Ford, then start them. Like that's just the reality. But other than that, yeah, they're all flex plays just because they're the most involved guys in this offense, and Philly's defense hasn't been great. Of course, you look at just so far this year, and teams have kind of had their way with this defense.
On the other side of the ball, I think it's sort of the name of start your guys, like we always say. Devonta Smith, clear in concussion protocol, which I think is important. I think that the only real knock on it would be Dallas Goedert kind of taking a little bit of a hit with obviously Devonta and A.J. Brown coming back. Brown looks healthy, and it looked like there was a potential he could play last week, or I should say 2 weeks ago. And then they kind of were like, no, we're going to wait till after the bye. Now, freshly off the bye week, A.J. Brown back healthy. And so they kind of gave him the extra week, and I think they were able to afford that with their team just kind of being stacked. And so, yeah, kind of just start your guys here. And I'm confident on all fronts with Hurts, Barkley, Brown, and Devonta.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add. Start your guys in this one. It should be a good matchup against Cleveland.
All right, so let's jump into our next matchup here. New England, they are going to host Houston, 1:00 start. Zach, let's start out with the interesting side of things. It's the New England Patriots. They flipped the script. They put Drake May in at quarterback. He will start. They rule Ramondre Stevenson out this week as well. Do you see a big output for Antonio Gibson, or is this going to be more so of a passing offense here?
I'm not sure what it's going to be. What I do know is I'm starting the Houston defense in like every single league now, Brett. Just because I think New England's offense kind of explains itself, how poor it's been. plus the fact now that they're without their top running back and their top weapon on offense in Ramondre Stevenson, plus the fact that they're putting in a rookie quarterback behind a line who has not been good so far this year. There's been a lot of sacks on Jacoby Brissett when he was starting. I am iffy on the situation of even starting Drake May this week if I'm New England, but when you look at it in terms of fantasy, like, yeah, Antonio Gibson is the top option because he's going to get the touches out of the backfield. I don't know if I can trust really any of the pass catchers though, Brett, more than flex plays. That's really it. When you look at a Jalen Polk or a Pop Douglas, like it, I have to see Drake May throw the ball first before I actually believe in one of these guys. And if he does throw the ball well this week, then sure enough, yeah, next week it could be an option. But right now, I don't even know where to go with this New England offense. They've been so poor, and I just don't know how much time in the pocket Drake May is actually going to get this week. It could be a week where he may have to like use his legs. That's just the reality of the situation right now for the Patriots.
Yeah, and there's a ton of guys that are out there, and they're owned in barely any leagues. Obviously, Polk is out there in like 92% of leagues. Douglas is out there in 93% of leagues, and et cetera, et cetera. It's just sort of where we saw the Patriots offense going. Yeah, I think if there was a guy that I would go out and potentially stash, it would be Jalen Polk. Obviously, selfishly from the dynasty perspective, Javon Baker. I went on my whole rant about Javon Baker last week, and we'll see if he even gets the start this week. But that was a guy who, with Drake May, had a bit of chemistry there. So he's sort of back on my radar here. I had to numbers game him, and he's out there in waivers on our league, just because the injury bug kind of hit my team. But as far as the actual starts this week, redraft perspective, you're probably starting Antonio Gibson because I think he's more of the solid option. But I'm tempering my expectations because I think they have to throw the ball this week just because the other side of the ball is very stacked.
Yeah, 100% agree. And on the other side, when you look at Houston, it's really simple to start your guys. Just because Nico Collins is out for this one. So I say usually start your guys. This week, it turns into Tank Dell in your lineup, definitely, now that Nico Collins is out. However, I do think that Houston could focus in on running the ball in this one, against this New England defense, who's been really poor against the run. So when you look at that, Joe Mixon, still questionable, practiced on Thursday and Friday. So something to keep an eye on, Brett, if he's going to be back. If he cannot go, I'm actually putting the radar on Dare Ogunbowale, who, yes, he's right there next to Cam Akers, but I feel like Ogunbowale has done more with his touches and has been the better option in the end. I think he had almost 20 fantasy points last week, Brett. So that proves that he is getting the touches more than a guy like Akers. Of course, you got Dameon Pierce hanging around. I don't know if he's fully 100% just yet, even if he does play. And for that reason, I'll pick Ogunbowale as the one back over the other two if Mixon can't go. But it looks like Mixon may be in there. And obviously, if he's in there, you are starting him right away.
Yeah, like you said, like he practiced in limited capacity on Thursday, Friday. As far as Akers' situation goes, it really hinges on the other guys. Akers is going to play. Pierce, they actually did clear him, and so he carries no injury designation, but that doesn't mean that he's 100%, even with no injury designation. He's still coming off the injury. And so I also agree with you, though. I think Ogunbowale has the upside over Pierce. And so, yeah, what it is, I think that Joe Mixon will end up playing, though. And so, therefore, you're just starting him, starting those wide receivers there. Like you said, Tank Dell is in because Nico Collins is out. Stroud, Schultz, you're just rolling with them.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so let's jump to the next one. Baltimore hosting Washington. Kind of a bummer because last week I actually was in Baltimore and Washington, and so would have loved to see that matchup play out in person. But alas, here we are. Commanders, let's start out with them. You're kind of just rolling the same kind of formula we've been saying. You're kind of starting your guys here. B-Rob, you're starting him, I believe, and Jaden Daniels, you're starting him, I believe. Terry McLaurin, and then I would say Zach Ertz probably is a really good start here in this case with the Ravens sort of struggling a bit here against the tight end position. So that's kind of just pretty easy for me there.
Yeah, Brett, obviously the question right now is the game time decision for Brian Robinson Jr. Did not practice all of this week. So that is something to keep an eye on. If he does not go, Austin Eckler might have a good day in this one. So if you have Eckler, should be in your lineup if Robinson can't go. But if Robinson is in there, of course, you are starting him.
And then on the other side of the ball, it's the same name of the game here. And we talked at the top of the show about the tight ends. And, if you missed it, go back, check that out from the show. With Likely versus Andrews, we kind of just both agreed on it that Likely carries more of the upside than Andrews. It's just sort of been a doom and gloom dud for Mark Andrews owners to start the season. As far as the rest of the guys go, Zay Flowers, you're starting him. Derrick Henry, starting him. Lamar Jackson, you're starting him. Justice Hill, I think right now, to me, is a guy that should be rostered in all. We saw a lot of the upside last week. Actually, the last couple of weeks, we've seen the upside of Justice Hill and what he can bring to this defense, that sort of change of pace from Derrick Henry. And so for me, I am at least stashing him in any league that I am.
Yeah, really start your guys, and the main three being Jackson, Flowers, and Henry. I think after that, you're kind of just looking at it. Tight end, I don't really believe in either. I know we had to make a pick before earlier in the episode. I don't know about the tight end situation overall. Based on that, Charlie Kolar is getting touches now, Brett, as well. So he's taking away from both Likely and Andrews. So nobody I could really trust here. I think the main three guys, and then after that, it's really just a bunch of flex plays and based on your lineup, based on bye weeks.
Yeah, not great at all. Let's jump right into the 4:00 window here. LA Chargers, they go into Denver, and Zach, Denver's riding high, but are there any actual starts from the fantasy perspective?
Denver, I would say that Javonte Williams is just in the start range now. Like he's getting his touches and he's making the most of them. So I would say he is a start. I would probably say maybe the only one. Yes, Cortland Sutton's kind of there, but I feel like with Bo Nix at quarterback, you just don't know what you're gonna get each and every week. And for that reason, it could be a run week, it could be a pass week. We don't know before the week starts. I think this one at home will probably be more of a run week. So that kind of means deploy your running backs in Denver this week. And for that reason, I'll say Javonte Williams could go in lineups this week. He's looked a lot better, Brett, and a positive sign for me as a dynasty owner trying to get him back to where he was just a couple years ago before the injury.
Yeah, it's certainly fair. I agree with you on all fronts. I think that another guy who I'm sort of just on the radar of putting in, and it's sort of based on your situation, is Cortland Sutton. They are playing against a secondary that has given up a ton of yards per target. And so I'm just sort of really reading into that stat. Bo Nix hasn't been really afraid to air it out a couple times in each game. And so, there is the option that Cortland comes down with one or two of those balls, and that totally changes the outlook on this entire fantasy. But I agree with you. I think as far as the sure start right now, I think that Javonte is a really good option, and we've sort of started to see him come back to be his own, where it looked like last year into the start of this year, it looked like it was like, okay, this is a committee and we're not really sure who's the guy. Bill McCockins kind of is taking a backseat right now to Javonte.
Yeah, definitely fair. And on the other side, I think when you you look at the situation in LA right now, and Justin Herbert kind of just getting back to normal. Of course, I think they are coming off a bye, I believe, right, Brett?
Yep.
Yeah, so he's had some time, and hopefully you see a healthier Justin Herbert in this one than you saw just a couple weeks ago. Obviously, has the week off, and maybe get back to 100% pretty soon. But I think really the only guy that I would say go after it in this one would be J.K. Dobbins, Brett. I think when you look at the rest of the guys, the wide receivers, even like Denver's defense has been so strong this year. I think the only reason I would go with Dobbins is just based on he's going to get the carries and he'll get a workload that you may have a shot to break one loose for Dobbins. But because of how good Denver's defense is, other than that, nobody besides Dobbins is really going in my lineup. I just don't trust anybody with how good Denver's defense has been.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's a tough matchup for a guy like Ladd McConkey. They might have to like spread him around a little bit more as far as where he's playing on the field, in the slot, out wide, to try to get him the ball, manufacture some of those touches. So yeah, I agree with you. It's a little bit of a tougher matchup for me to go out and just start Ladd McConkey. Quentin Johnston, same thing. He's probably going to draw some coverage from Patrick Surtain, who's done a really good job of settling guys into the abyss. And so he's off the radar for me this week. Josh Palmer, same thing, where he's kind of taken a backseat to those two guys. And I think that Palmer has become a drop candidate in the bulk of leagues right now, just because we saw the high potential for him this year and it kind of just didn't happen. Obviously, injuries do that, where you kind of get Wally pipped, and now all of a sudden Quentin Johnston and Ladd McConkey look like they're the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1, respectively. But yeah, I think Dobbins right now, you kind of have to start him because he's just been really good, even against some of these tougher matchups. They've obviously trying to lean into the run, and we saw that kind of from the get-go. But yeah, tough matchup here. You're starting him. You're tempering your expectations. And then, yeah, as far as Herbert, like he's coming into his own. You're not in a one quarterback league starting him by any means, especially in this matchup. Super flex, like you're starting him. There's no issue.
Yeah, agreed.
Let's jump right into the next matchup. Pittsburgh at Las Vegas. Zach, I mean, I don't know which side you want to start with. Let's start with Vegas, because I think that Aiden O'Connell coming in, being quarterback, they kind of flipped the script here for them. Devontae, there's the whole situation with him right now. And it looks like he played his last down as a Raider, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's the situation right now in Vegas. I think this week I'm tempering expectations for the guys that are going in my lineup for Vegas this week, just because of the tough matchup against Pittsburgh, whose defense is always really, really strong and is not going to make it easy on a quarterback like Aiden O'Connell. I think the only two guys that are really on my radar, Brett, are Jacoby Myers is one of them, because Devontae is out, and I think he's just the number one weapon. The other guy is Brock Bowers, obviously, who's been one of the top tight ends in the league so far this season. Like I said, for both of those guys, tempering expectations, but I think they have the best chance to put up points. I don't trust anybody in the running back room, even Zamir White. Like, there is no chance that I am putting any of those guys in my lineup. Madison's good one day. Zamir White's good another day, and all of a sudden we get a taste of Amir Abdullah last week, Brett. So just tells you the situation. It's all by committee, and there's no one clear option in that backfield.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think that for me, it really just comes down to if Zamir White is actually playing this week. He didn't practice all week, came in on Friday, had a limited practice, and so he's listed as questionable, game time decision. We'll see what happens. And if Zamir White does play, I'm actually not afraid to put Alexander Madison in, even in this ridiculously hard matchup, just based on the fact he got 15 touches last week, 15 carries. And so there's the chance that he falls into the end zone. And we're in a bye week right now. We're seeing a ton of these running backs that are ruled out, whatever. If you're in a bind, I mean, Alexander Madison's out there in 50% of leagues. He's owned in only 50% of leagues. And so it's a starting running back. It is an option. I'm not excited about it. But in the case that Zamir White is not playing, it's one I would maybe, go to if I needed to. Like you said, though, as far as the rest of the guys, Brock Bowers, obviously you're starting him. He looks just like the focal point of this entire offense. And then, Jacoby Myers, obviously, because Devontae is not in, they have to throw the ball to someone, and it can't always be Brock Bowers, so somebody else has to get in. Aiden O'Connell for me, like I picked him up and stashed him in our Dynasty League just because he was out there starting quarterback. I'm tempering my expectations like ridiculous in this because I don't know what this is going to look like if we're going to see the Aiden O'Connell that we saw that showed flashes last year. Or we're going to kind of see this Aiden O'Connell that's the backup quarterback that we kind of have seen in the past. Which Aiden O'Connell are we going to get? Don't really know, but it's a really tough matchup for him. So I'm not starting him this week, but I am stashing him as far as those super flex leagues.
Definitely fair. I think when you look at the other side in Pittsburgh, it's Najee Harris, Justin Fields, and George Pickens. Pat Freiermuth also just on the radar just because of consistency as a tight end is everything we ask for in tight end so far this season, Brett, because it's been anything but. So he's on the radar as well. But I think it's the main three guys in Fields, Harris, as well as George Pickens. And there's a lot of noise right now about George Pickens. I think it could be a week where get him some targets and make him feel a little bit better. Just because of the lot going on right now. And as a George Pickens owner, I don't think I could expect anything less than an Arthur Smith offense. He just continues to surprise me, Brett.
Yeah, certainly agree. It's just been pretty brutal as far as what that is. Let's jump right into the next matchup here. Atlanta at Carolina. The battle of the old guys, Andy Dalton taking on Kirk Cousins. Zach, let's start out with Kirk because I think it's a little bit easier from their perspective. You're kind of just rolling with the guys that we talk about every single week. 509 yards and 4 touchdowns for Kirk Cousins last week. I think I'm starting him this week. And obviously, really good matchup to do that for. Obviously, it depends on who your starter is. If Kirk Cousins is your starter and you also got like Josh Allen or something like that, there's a question there because I think of the output. And obviously, they're playing against the Jets in Buffalo. So, I'll let you take it from here. But that's sort of what my approach is here.
Yeah, no, I have a question for you, actually. With my top league, Kirk Cousins and CJ Stroud are my quarterbacks. CJ Stroud, yes, he has a solid matchup, but I feel like they could maybe go to the run game a little bit more. And it's kind of a decision, Stroud or Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has a fantastic matchup against Carolina, and Carolina's run defense has clamped down just a tiny bit. Their passing defense is god-awful. So there's the decision there on my end of Stroud and Kirk Cousins this week, Brett.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think, honestly, I probably would take Cousins this week. And it's crazy to say that. But I just think the matchup's too good to be true. I hope that we don't see some sort of dud. But we haven't seen anything out of Carolina that warrants any sort of fear playing Kirk Cousins this week. So, top 5 option for me. And like I said, that Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins question certainly is out there right now for those owners. And, you can't fault anybody for just saying, nah, I'm going with Josh Allen. But it's close. I think it's kind of a close call for me. But what do you think of the rest of the guys here in this offense?
Yeah, definitely. I'll just take it. Bijan, of course, and London and Mooney, and you're going to start Kyle Pitts probably as well as a tight end, just because bye weeks as well. You may just have no choice, and that's fair in the end. It is a good matchup against this Carolina defense. Like I said, their pass defense has been woeful this year, and just kind of take advantage of the matchup. Atlanta and Carolina. I do feel like in a like survivor pool, this is the trick play right here. Hopefully, we're not wrong on this one. I think when you look at Atlanta, they clearly look like the better team heading into this matchup, and it should be a field day for this offense. On the Carolina side, Brett, I think it's just the two guys in Chuba Hubbard as well as Deontay Johnson. Anything after that, I don't really trust it too much. And for that reason, yeah, it's pretty straightforward when you look at these two teams.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson for me last week playing against Chicago kind of battled the same injury he was battling this week. Practice limited all week this week. Last week he had the same exact injury. Came down with barely any usage. He had 3 catches for 23 yards, and so it wasn't great. They're gonna have to feed him the ball because somebody's got to get the ball here. I'm firing up Chuba Hubbard with confidence here, but Deontay Johnson, I'm a little bit nervous because we don't know if he's actually going to end up playing. I'm guessing he will, but right up until kickoff, I guess we'll find out. So, yeah, I don't think that even if Deontay doesn't play, like I'm not going to Xavier yet. I don't know that it's that reliable of an option. I just haven't totally seen it yet.
Yeah, definitely fair.
All right, so let's jump to the next one, 425, the final game. What?
Brett, we have one viewer question.
Oh, go ahead. Let's see. Should we pick up David Njoku, Otten, or Likely for next week with Ferguson on the bye? This from Pareko. Colt Pareko, I'm guessing that is a reference to. Zach, what do we think here? Cade Otten, David Njoku, Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, so I just looked up. Yeah, I looked up the matchups. Njoku's playing the Bengals. And then Otten and Likely are on opposite sides on Monday night. It's Ravens against Bucks. So I would say the best choice in my mind would be Cade Otten. I know that's a little iffy based on just there's weapons there and just figuring things out. They are the home team on Monday night against Baltimore. The other thing about Njoku is I just don't know yet. Of course, the Bengals defense has been bad this year. However, the Browns offense has been equally bad as well. So I don't know how much I could trust Deshaun Watson if he's playing at quarterback to get it to Njoku a lot. Of course, on a bye for Ferguson, I'd say Otten is probably the best option based on matchup here.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Cade Otten for me, like I said earlier when we were talking about the Bucks, number 3 option in this offense with Jalen McMillan being out. I still think that he's still going to have a very solid, output even when McMillan comes back because he's sort of just become a Mr. Reliable a little bit here. 8 targets, 9 targets in the last couple weeks, and last week was a little bit of a different matchup with Atlanta. But yeah, I like Otten, and yes, obviously matchup is different, but at the same time, home team. I'm taking him, especially in PPR leagues.
Definitely fair.
All right, so the next one here, as we jump over to our next matchup, is the Giants. Here, Giants at home to Cincinnati. 8:20 start Sunday Night Football, and obviously we talk about Malik Neighbors being out. Zach, what is your look on the output here as far as the other Giants receivers?
I think when you look at it, it's Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton are the top 2 guys. And for those reasons, those guys are options in your lineup with Neighbors being out. After that, like if you're looking at the running back position and see based on Devin Singletary's health, if Singletary's in, you're starting him. If he's out, I would consider Tyrone Tracy, Brett, who's on the waiver wire and somebody to look at, should be picked up in leagues just based on the output he was able to get without Devin Singletary in the lineup last week. And he is a really solid option. Tracy is, if Singletary can't go. I think it's just those two or Tracy plus the 2 wide receivers in Robinson and Slayton this week.
Yeah, I think that, as far as it goes with the Giants, like you're putting Slayton in, and I think you're definitely parting. You're playing Wan'Dale Robinson this week because he's just been a stud. They figured out ways to get on the ball, even with Neighbors there. So comes a must start for me. Theo Johnson, still a guy who's on my radar. Definitely a guy that in the deep leagues go out and stash. And we saw in the last week where Neighbors wasn't in, Theo Johnson having his best performance as a New York Giant. I also think this is a week where, Daniel Jones streaming option here. We'll see what's happening with the running back situation. So I'm not sure that I can make a call either way before we see what's going on with Singletary. But yeah, as far as the rest of those guys, I think those three guys are some pretty solid options.
Yeah, 100% agree. And when you look at it on the other side for Cincinnati, it's basically simple of start your guys. However, the questions right now of the running back room and Chase Brown looks really good. Zach Moss looks really good. Chase Brown eating into touches, maybe. Like, I don't know. I think when you look at the matchup overall, it's a tough one. In the end, I would trust Zach Moss more than I'd trust Chase Brown in this game because I think when you look at it, the weakness of the Giants defense is their secondary. It is not their run defense, which has been really strong. And of course, they are losing Kayvon Thibodeau. You mentioned it before, going on IR. But Dexter Lawrence is a man on a mission on the defensive line, and he's been so far this season. I would say just start the weapons of Joe Burrow. Of course, you're going to start Burrow in this one as well, but Jamar Chase and T. Higgins may have 100 points combined in this one. The Giants secondary, although they looked good last week against Seattle, I think Cincinnati could have a field day here and go to town on them.
Yeah, it's a must start for all those guys. Totally agree on all fronts. I don't think there's anything to add there. Let's jump right to the Monday night game. Jets hosting Buffalo. Zach, I think that we should probably start with these Aaron Rodgers-led New York Jets. What do you think the output is as far as obviously new coach, new offense? Like, do you see any change potential coming on the rise here?
I don't really see too much. I think that the one thing that stands out heading into this week is Breece Hall and just the struggles that have happened for Breece the last couple of weeks. And I think when you look at Breece and the value that he has in fantasy football right now, obviously not where he needs to be, and they will get him the ball. I think that's the focus in this game. Get Breece Hall into good spots, get him the ball, and Buffalo's run defense has been very bad so far this year. This is a great matchup for Breece Hall to get involved. I also think Braylon Allen could get involved as well. So a guy to keep an eye on. But when you look at it in the end, Breece Hall, this could be the game that you finally say, all right, as an owner, you kind of sit back and relax after a couple of poor weeks from Breece. But I think they're going to get Garrett Wilson involved as well. Maybe some of the other weapons in you got Lazard and Mike Williams, but I really think truly the guys to start here is Breece Hall and as well as Garrett Wilson, like I said, and the other guys, Braylon Allen, Mike Williams, Alan Lazard, all just being flex plays in the end, Brett.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like I talked about, it's a tough matchup here. Obviously for both sides of it. I'd say the Bills are a tough matchup. Jets are a tough matchup. I'm rolling my guys here. I think that I've read that they're going to play a tougher, more up speed offense. I'm not really sure what that means. Tougher, more up speed. Maybe it just means they're going to try to feed Breece a little bit more. We sort of saw this like dual running back formation quite a bit. It was effective where they had Braylon Allen and Breece Hall on the field, at the same exact time. I think we start to see that a little bit more. But yeah, as far as the up tempo, like I don't know. Aaron Rodgers is going to run the offense that Aaron Rodgers runs. Obviously, you don't have Hackett calling the plays anymore. So yeah, maybe they lean into the run, and I don't know. It remains to be seen. I guess we kind of just have to wait and see what it looks like before we can say, okay, well, here's what they did. Alan Lazard, I still think, is a guy that should be rostered in every league. And so for me, I don't know that I'm looking at Mike Williams or anything, but you're rolling Garrett Wilson in there. You're rolling Breece Hall in there. Rodgers, I think, is a flex option this week, or I should say a super flex option this week, but nothing more than that because of the matchup. And then Lazard, yeah, listen, Lazard's like a flex option for me. I can see other people going the other way, but in this sort of week where they're going to try to boil it down and try to go in on Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson like every other week, this is a time where Lazard can get some of those Rodgers brownie points that he just has continued to get year after year, and everybody keeps ignoring it, with the potential that he scores a touchdown.
Yeah, definitely fair. And Brett, when you look at it from the Buffalo standpoint, Josh Allen, it is going to be a tough matchup this week. He's going up against the Jets defense, looking to bounce back after the last couple of weeks, and the Jets defense has been really strong this year. A very tough matchup for him. I don't know how confident I feel in a lot of these guys this week. You're still going to probably start the main guys of Dalton Kincaid and obviously a question right now on James Cook, Brett, but then you also have Khalil Shakir, who's I think questionable coming into this one. Like those are the main guys that you would think about. I would say based on matchup, if you have others to look at, like you can debate it. But James Cook is obviously the question mark. I know you have more on that one, Brett.
Yeah, it looks like James Cook is going to play. So yeah, tough matchup. I did go ahead to Ty Johnson just in case, based on what happens. And people will say, well, wait a minute, what about Ray Davis? I just think Ray Davis has been good, and the guy who's been scoring the touchdowns is Ty Johnson. So that's the guy that I actually want. In that sort of desperation Monday night, you don't have anybody else going, and you kind of need to put somebody in there. So for me, that's where I'm there. I'm really just playing Dalton Kincaid, and we're going to kind of monitor what's going on with Khalil Shakir. But he's a tough matchup. And so for me, I'm kind of just leaning that way. I think that James Cook is a good option, though, if he does play. The Jets have just not been able to figure out what's going on with the running back situations in other locker rooms. And so, yeah, I'm James Cook out there, no problem if he is healthy and ready to go. He didn't practice this week. Then all of a sudden he was like a limited, and then all of a sudden it was he's questionable, and then his agent comes out and says, oh, he's playing, he's going to play. So to me, that's like, okay, great. You can go after that. So, yeah, while I see everybody, though, picking up Ray Davis, I still am looking at the who's going to get the touchdowns. And so Ray Davis hasn't really been doing that as much as Ty Johnson has within the 5-yard line. It's kind of the same thing we talked about last year with that Lat Murray situation where it was like, okay, well, they're within the 5-yard line, give the ball to Lat Murray. I see the sort of thing here.
Yeah, I think this one is more relying on the veteran in Ty Johnson, who's kind of been there, done that for multiple organizations. And Ray Davis, you're kind of teaching him as you go. Obviously a rookie this year. Next couple of years after this, you could say, all right, Ray Davis could be the number 2 and get some of those opportunities. But for right now, bring in Ty Johnson, help Ray Davis kind of learn the ways. And then in the future, it could be a really solid option in the end.
All right. So before we go to our lock of the week and ones to watch, let's go back to a viewer question here from Pareko. Crazy question asked, I just realized Harrison Butker is available. Do I drop Davian Wicks to pick him up next week if my kicker is McPherson? I have Mahomes as my quarterback. Zach, thoughts on Harrison Butker to get the stack there with Mahomes?
Yeah, I mean, it's good in the end. I would say kind of pray that nobody picks up Dontavian Wicks. I think he's a valuable piece right now, Brett. There could be the question of if there's somebody else on your roster, but in the end, if there's no choice in the end, I would say yes, get him, and then you probably end up dropping McPherson and getting another weapon out of it. Of course, Bucker on a bye this week, so you're going to have to put McPherson in. But after that, I would say, yeah, drop him and then maybe get somebody back. If Wicks is still available, then of course go get him. I do think that stack, though, is valuable, though, Brett, with Mahomes and Bucker, just this Chiefs offense. I'm even doing that with Washington's offense right now, Brett, just based on like Daniels is moving and Seibert, their kicker is working really well so far this year. So whenever you can get an opportunity to do that, yes, I recommend it.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bit of a risk, obviously, when you put a guy like a Wicks out there, and there's the potential that he has a good game. And we talked about that matchup. It could be one of those where Wicks gets a lot of points, but in the case that he doesn't, that's the kind of the risk that we're playing here. So yeah, I do. I think it is a good move because in the end, then you do get that stack. You play McPherson for a week, then you drop McPherson and pick up Wick or other valuable piece out there. So yeah, I'm with it. I think the move is pretty good. So let's jump now into our lock of the week. Zach, these are guys who are 20th or later in standard PPR rankings. We're going by ESPN's rankings. Zach, who do you have this week? Well, actually, let's first break down last week. Brandon Ayuk, I had to your Amari Cooper, so I actually get first pick this week. Forget what I said. Brandon Ayuk, 22.7 PPR points. Amari Cooper's 10 PPR points. I'm up 3-1 in the standings, which is unlike us for this year. Usually you're ahead in this and I'm ahead in ones to watch. I will gladly take the first pick here. I'm taking Chris Olave. I think that it was kind of shocking to see him picked as, the number 21 ranking. And yes, I get it. He has a matchup against Tampa Bay. And obviously Spencer Rattler is playing against or is throwing him the ball rather. And so I just think for me, he's just so good. And so I said it before, like, reliable. That's kind of where I'm seeing it. So I'm picking Chris Olave. Zach, you just switched up your pick here. Explain to the people.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and then it kind of popped in my head, and I said, you know what? I'm going to take a better option in my mind here, and it's Jalen Tolbert, who I will tell the viewers I was thinking Rome Odunze, and then I switched it around. I'm going Jalen Tolbert. I think when you look at this Cowboys offense right now and Brandon Cooks being hurt, I think when you look at Jalen Tolbert and his production from last week against the Steelers, he could have a really solid week once again this week against Detroit's defense. Their secondary has been terrible this year. That's been their weak spot. And I think at home, Dallas could go with Jalen Tolbert as well as CeeDee Lamb in this one. I just like it a little bit more than the Bears in the end against Jacksonville. I'm going to pick Jalen Tolbert in the end, Brett.
All right, so let's jump into our ones to watch. These are guys who are owned in 50% or less in leagues. Zach, this is usually a slam dunk for me every single week. This week, it was your week, though. Mike Williams outscoring Dontavian Wicks. Shout out Pareko for Dontavian Wicks that we just talked about. 4.5 PPR points to the 4 PPR points. So, Zach, you get first pick here on ones to watch.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Braylon Allen here, Brett. And you may say sitting here, wow, Braylon Allen's still available. Yeah, 45% of leagues, and he's not in 50% of leagues in terms of ESPN either. So that means that he's still available. And a lot of teams still have the capability to go get him. I know that some people may be down on the Jets offense right now. However, this week they're going up against Buffalo, whose run defense has been very poor so far this season. And when you look at the injuries that Buffalo have had, plus the fact that I think Braylon Allen in this offense, the Jets can rely on that run game. They feel confident enough now that they can play maybe some hard-nosed football. Braylon Allen is the face of that, I would say, in the end, him next to Breece Hall. And for that reason, yeah, Braylon Allen, definitely a guy that I'm targeting this week. And like I said, only 45% of leagues. Get that up to over 50%. This guy's valuable. And if something happens to Breece Hall, like, you have the top guy right there in Braylon Allen, who will get loads of touches in this Jets offense.
I'm going a bit of a deeper dive here, and we talked about it a little bit before. See the upside of Jalen Polk this week. Is only owned in 15% of ESPN leagues, 8% in Yahoo leagues. Listen, they played every single snap in the offense last week. Now they make the quarterback switch to Drake May. We obviously saw the chemistry between Drake May and Javon Baker, but of course we can't have Javon Baker out there playing each and every week. So I'm going with Polk. I think that the upside is just there. He got 6 targets last week. I'm not reading into that because there's a new quarterback. I think this is upside. So I'm just going to ride it. And, we crash and burn. But certainly should be a guy that is rostered in more than 8% of leagues or 15% of leagues, depending on where you play.
Yeah, definitely fair.
All right, Zach, so that will do it. Enjoy the football Saturday. Cotton Bowl coming up in a couple hours. Florida taking on Tennessee later on tonight, and then it's right on to football Sunday with the NFL. Make sure you set your lineup early because obviously, as we talked about, you have a London game going, Jacksonville and Chicago. Go check out some of our other episodes. Subscribe to us on YouTube and give us a sub. And it's dark before the dawn, we shall rise again. Zach Malvin, I'm Brett Malvin. This has been the Third Round Reversal for Fantasy Football Podcast. Catch you on the next one.